mi occupo di data science e insomma vi racconto 2 minuti giustamente perché siamo qui, ma soprattutto vi dico come si svolgerà la serata. Abbiamo Luca e Pietro che sono gli organizzatori di PyData, io vi do una mano, poi loro vi spiegano cos'è PyData, e poi abbiamo i nostri speaker. Dopodiché ci fermiamo qui, appena fuori dall'auditorium ci sarà un brevissimo aperitivo, giusto per scambiarci i contatti, 2 chiacchiere e l'account di LinkedIn, e poi andiamo a cena tutti insieme. Quindi chi vuole rimanere, tutti benvenuti. La cena, ve lo devo dire, quella è a carico vostro, però adesso vi mettiamo anche un QR code. Vi chiedo per gli esterni, quindi chi si è già registrato degli interni non c'è bisogno, per gli esterni se volete fermarvi a cena con noi inquadrate il QR code e dite sì, andiamo al 7 Lupoli che è qua dietro. Io ho detto tutto, ancora vi dico grazie di essere venuti, perché abbiamo deciso di, come Plenitude, di ospitare questo primo meetup di PyData. Per chi non ci conosce, siamo una società del gruppo Eni, ci occupiamo di energia rinnovabile, quindi abbiamo la produzione di energia rinnovabile, le ricariche delle colonie di ricarica elettrica e la vendita di gas, luce e servizi di efficientamento energetico. Sono 3 mondi pieni di dati e quindi quei dati stiamo cercando di lavorarci sempre di più. Abbiamo una data community interna che abbiamo avuto poco fa e potete prendere i gadget della nostra data community. Ci è venuta questa voglia anche di guardare all'esterno e quindi questo è il nostro primo tentativo di affacciarsi anche su una community più estesa e ci fa piacere avervi tutti qua. Vi ringrazio di essere ancora tutti qua, non mi aspettavo così tanta partecipazione, quindi il mio forecasting è stato completamente sbagliato, invece siamo in overbooking, quindi grazie ancora e spero di aver preso tempo abbastanza per risolvere i problemi tecnici.
And we're very happy to have you, as Paolo was saying. I mean, it was an unexpected response. And we are very happy that this is the first event of a new PyData chapter in Milan. The other important thing is that we are born inside of an existing meetup, Python Milano, who has been running for 10 years. And we share support. Cesare, for example, there doing the video, is one of the organizers of Python Milano. But let me say something more on PyData. PyData, you might not know it already, is a community of users and developers of open source tools. It was basically born, the anecdote goes that at some of the early meetings of the creators of NumPy, Travis Oliphant and Peter Wang of what will become Anaconda, at a meeting with Guido Van Rossum for Python, they said, oh, we have packaging problems, go solve them yourself. And they solved their problems, and they created also a big community, which then grew into an organization, NumFocus, a non-profit US charity, that whose mission is to further open practices in science, research, and education. Not everyone knows that PyData, although it has the name Py at the beginning, is not only limited to Python, is open source scientific stack, but other projects supported by PyData and NumFocus. So PyData is technically a program of NumFocus, which is the charity. But NumFocus sponsors well-known projects like NumPy, Scikit-learn, and provides a lot of fiscal sponsorship and ways to handle the grants and stuff. You will learn more about pydata.org and numfocus.org. Let's say that we are number 230 in a number of groups supported by this very big network. So, the plan now is to start with meetups, targeting monthly meetups, and we have an idea of trying to target the third week Wednesday of the month. Just also for ourselves to get already a moment, but this might vary from time to time, and we are currently planning February, April, and June. An important thing, and Luca will say a little bit more, we have a call for speakers open. You have the link also on the meetup, so if you want to talk here, please reach out to us in the call for speakers. And this is the important bit that Paolo was referring before. If you want to come to dinner, please go that QR code and say yes, so that we count you, and we have a more or less approximate count of how many are coming to dinner for the dinner place that will be later. Okay. I'll leave it a few seconds, or you already have done this. Not yet. We will show you anyway at the end again these slides with the QR code. Okay. One of the important values of PyData is diversity, because this is something that I also believe strongly, that a diverse community is more valuable. It's not only, the right thing to do, to include people coming from all different identities and background, but also it's something that makes the community stronger, that gives more ideas, more points of view, and so this is something that is particularly important for me and for PyData in general, and this is what we want to build. So wherever you come from, however you feel, please feel welcome, and everybody should try to make everybody else welcome. So we have a code of conduct that ultimately is being enforced by NumFocus directly, but otherwise come to us if there is something happening. But the GIST, in-person event is something that is not so tricky, but just be kind, be professional, and be welcoming, because in a welcoming, in a safe space, people share more, get ideas that they are not sure of, and everybody is more enriched, because we are dealing with scientific stuff, complex algorithms that are advanced, are understood better and shared better in a safe space. This is at least my position. Something else that PyData organizes are conferences, and also as part of Python Milano, we refer also to Python Italia. There are some conferences which are great places. So also, meetups are a great place to start practicing speaking. So we have two very expert speakers here, but every kind of speaker is welcome at this meetup. And there is, in April, PyCon Germany and PyData Berlin, which is organized both by Python Software Foundation and PyData. We will have in May PyCon Italia, which is organized by PyCon Italia, but it has a lot of, let's say, PyData content. And there is in June PyData London, and they are all open for tickets, and they are great places. Actually, the motivation for me to bring here the PyData network was when last year in September I went to PyData Amsterdam, which was just a great event. So maybe we have a dream at some point to make a PyData Milan conference. We will see. But for that we will need manpower also. So woman power, people power, and we will need your help. Okay? But we have another announcement to make, and I will pass the microphones to Luca.
Okay, so as we were saying, there are plenty of conferences going around. The first one being the one they showed here, but like the season opens basically with what's happening. And we would love to give the start of this with a new conference we've been organizing, like a previously unseen event, at least in Italy I would say, in which we call it Python for AI, or Py for AI for short. It's a conference we organize as PyData Milan and Python Milan, with the support of AlgoVision and CVision, especially to Alessandro Ferrari, who is the CEO of Vision. It will be a conference about Python and artificial intelligence, which will take place on March 16th in Pavia. I should be transferred from here to there. The conference is free. The first 100 tickets went away like in 4 hours. So we will be announcing more tickets in the upcoming weeks. So please keep in touch and connect over either the website, py4ai.com, or the LinkedIn page, Python Milano, to keep in touch about the upcoming news. And just to briefly say something about Python Milano, which we talked about a lot right now. Python Milano is the OG meetup, Python meetup in Milan, at least. It's been going on for 10 years. I started as a contributor to the community, as a speaker in Python Milan community last year. And I got involved in the organization. I'm currently one of the organizers. And this year, since we had so much manpower, so much energy, so much feedback, and there was so much demand for events, we thought that it was the moment for us to step up the game and organize a conference, which is Python for AI, which could be, like the seeds of a PyData event, and also PyData Milan, because there is a high demand for data science content specifically. And this got us a chance to meet wonderful people. Cesare over there is on the cameraman tonight. He's one of the OG organizers of Python Milano, Carlo here as well, and also Marco, who isn't here today. And Cesare and Marco, both the organizer of the Intervista Pythonista, which is a wonderful podcast you should be subscribing to. Once every 3 weeks or so, they interview an Italian Pythonista, so the podcast is Italian only, but definitely worth it. We try to find out a lot of Italian Pythonistas everywhere in the world and say what they have to do. And to avoid overlapping, we will try for the upcoming months to hold the Python Milano events on the first week, hopefully the first Wednesday of the month, or the first week of the month. So the next meetup will be on February 7th. The place is Vedrai, like it's a company. There are still some tickets. They might be at the link there, at the meetup link, but they might also be on Eventbrite. If they finish, you can go Google up there. And we're really grateful for Python Milan, but we're also grateful to a lot of other organizations, such as the Python Software Foundation on the Python Milano side, who supports Python Milan, and the Vision Lab, of course, because they provided us with the equipment to record and live stream the organization, as well as the manpower, the knowledge to do so. And finally, Python Italia also, which is the organization that organizes PyCon, the Italian conference of Python, for providing us the equipment to record Intervista Pythonista. And I think this should be pretty much all of it, right? No, actually, the most important bit. You can be the next speaker. You will be the next speaker of PyData Milan, as well as Python Milano. It's pretty much the same, but to make it specific, we have 2 open call for proposals on Sessionize, especially talking about the one about PyData. You don't need to be experienced to join. You don't need to have a clear idea. The fact that we use a Sessionize or a call for proposal page just for us to keep all the proposals in the same place, but you don't need to be experienced. You don't need to be skilled in writing those. We can arrange something out. We can talk about it if you're unsure about the topic or how to propose it, how to talk about it. It doesn't need to be in English if you don't feel confident enough. We are a welcoming community, though we may be recommending that if you can do that, because it will make your talk more accessible to everyone. And the only, let's say, constraint in a pretty broad sense is that it has to be about data. It doesn't need to be Python. It doesn't need data in every way, shape, or form. So it might be how you use data, how to analyze data, how you work on data science or AI or just bash scripts, curl scripts. I mean, anything related to that. It can also be something theoretical. So if you can explain how the artificial intelligence works, for example, how to play with an Arduino to gather data about your IoT devices. This can be anything. So if you're in doubt that you feel that these guidelines are just a bit too broad or they might be on the loose edge, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We will gladly help you to write down the best proposal you can come up with for this tutorial, but also maybe in the future for upcoming conferences. So without further ado, I think we can go on with the talks for tonight, the real meat. But first we have Juan, actually, who is a product manager for Kedro, which is a wonderful framework for doing MLOps. And then afterwards we'll have Ivan talking about how to do scalable ML with Ray on Vertex AI, which is the Google platform for AI development. I think that being said, we can just welcome a host, right?
Yes.
Great.
It's
my fault that I forgot to put the name of the speakers there. First meetup. So, Juanlo, I'm very happy that you're joining us on stage. We met in Amsterdam, and it was one of, I mean, he also motivated me to start these things with the other friends here. So, the stage is yours.
Can you hear me with this one here? No? No? Hello?
Can you juggle both?
Yeah, I think so. Non ho capito niente di quello che hanno detto. E allora, signori e signori, grazie mille per venire qua. Il mio italiano proprio non funziona. Ho fatto l'Erasmus qua 10 anni fa. Non riesco a fare la chiacchierata in italiano, mi dispiace molto. Comunque lo farò in inglese. Ma mi piace molto stare qua un'altra volta. So, where are we? Well, hello everyone, and thanks a lot for coming. So there's a lot of things that I want to cover in this talk, and so I'm going to do a show of hands first. So who of you is working with data and Python at the moment in any way? Okay, most of the people. Who has put some machine learning model in production, or maybe the team next to you or some of the team in your organization? Okay, like 60% more or less. Was it you who put the model in production? Okay. Did that involve translating someone else's Jupyter notebook at some point? And did you like it? No. Nobody likes that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges of putting machine learning AI in production and how we try to solve some of those problems with Kedro. But first of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Juan Luis. I'm an aerospace engineer by training. Then I went to do software development, data science, developer advocacy, lots of different things. As I said before, I did one Erasmus year here at Politecnico, 2012-2013. And I'm in love with open source communities, in general tech communities. I've been the organizer of PyData Madrid meetups, so same as here, but in Madrid. If you're ever in town, please show around. And very involved in the Python community in Spain in general. So I co-founded the Python Spain nonprofit. I organized the first 7 editions of PyCon in Spain. So yeah, I've been doing this for a very long time. And now I work as a product manager at McKinsey with an open source framework, which is Kedro, that I'm going to describe in a moment. And so I'm very happy also to be able to do open source as part of my day job. So I'm going to start with the catchy title that maybe brought some people here. Who needs ChatGPT, right? Well, let's zoom in a little bit on that, right? Because the truth is that we live in the golden age of commercial AI these days. This is a screenshot from the specialized GPT's announcement that OpenAI made some months ago, but there's now several companies doing LLMs, AI through APIs and those kind of services, right? Which is super powerful and lowers the barrier of entry for anybody to use and build AI-powered applications. But there's also open models, as with anything. You know, we had closed source software for many years, and then the open source movement blossomed around that. And these days we also have open AI models. And I put a star there because the definition of open in the context of AIs, LLMs, and so on is still up to debate. In fact, the open source initiative is still working on that, whether it means opening the weights, the training data, describing the architecture, or just, you know, giving away the model and allowing you to use it. So I'm going to say open here in a very hand-wavy way, but basically what I mean is I can download it and use it on my laptop with maybe a certain amount of commercial restrictions or whatever, but it's a software that runs on my machine. And probably the primary place that is hosting these days the largest number of open models is Hugging Face. Who already knows Hugging Face? Who has used some model from Hugging Face? All right. So I don't need to explain what it is, but just to mention that when I took this screenshot, there were more than 400,000 model hosted, which I think is impressive. However, as with lots of open things, with great power comes great responsibility, which means that you have to choose which one of those 400,000 models you need to use for your specific task. And you need to operate it, and then operating the model requires a very beefy machine with hopefully GPUs, lots of RAM, things like that. So you're suddenly in charge of the infrastructure, and that comes at a cost, right? Apart from all the other MLOps things that you have to do. So this will mean that at some point you will be creating some glue code that is going to maybe join different models that do different things and so on. And now you are also responsible for that code, right? So at that point you will start hearing things like the typical things we've been hearing in data science for the past 10 years. Things like everybody works in different ways, my code doesn't run in someone else's machine, and everybody uses different code styles and things like that. So in summary, probably the AI model is only the beginning, and you're going to have lots of different problems, and standardizing your code and being able to quickly ship AI pipelines, machine learning pipelines to production is going to be a big challenge. With this, we created Kedro some years ago, before the creation of AI, of course, but we were applying that to machine learning pipelines. So Kedro is an open source framework for maintainable data science that tries to make it easier for people to put pipelines in production. So it's a moderately successful open source product. Now it has more than 9,000 GitHub stars, and probably we'll have like 60 more at the end of this meetup, more or less. And it was created initially inside McKinsey to serve its consulting teams for the data projects that they were doing. And then in 2019, it was open sourced, which was quite a novel thing for a firm like McKinsey at the time. And moreover, in 2021, it was donated to the Linux Foundation. So Linux Foundation has a branch called AI and Data, and it's now an incubation project, which means that it's no longer something exclusively controlled by McKinsey, but in fact, there's a number of companies that are involved in the development, the expansion, the promotion of Kedro. So here is, in a nutshell, how a Kedro pipeline is defined. So you see on the left a graphical representation of the pipeline. This is created using Kedro Viz, one of the plugins that we maintain. And there's basically two kinds of blobs here. One are the datasets. These represent anything that needs to do input or output, usually loading or writing some file from some location, can be a local location or some object storage remotely. But it can also be downloading some Hugging Face model from the Hugging Face cloud, which is what we're going to show next. Then you have the nodes, the proper nodes that we're calling in Kedro, and these are wrappers over Python functions. So the idea is that the function should not take care of any input or output. They will only receive pandas data frames or pre-trained model or whatever, and it's going to produce some other result with the idea that these functions are pure, in technical terms, as possible. So no side effects, clean code, and etc. The way you define the datasets is with the YAML catalog. So the catalog contains a list of datasets that are associated with some Python class. This Python class is going to take care of all the input and output. Kedro ships a lot of different types of datasets, so you can read CSV files with pandas or with polars, if you're a fan of polars. You can load TensorFlow models, Hugging Face models, there's dozens of them. And you specify where the location is, that again can be a local file or some remote location, and some extra parameters. And then on the right, you have the definition of the pipeline itself. So the pipeline links the node functions, so the things that are going to do the computation, business logic, and so on, with the actual datasets that are going to be loaded from somewhere. And the moment you do this, Kedro already knows how to run this code, because if the second node requires an input from the first node, it means that it needs to run the first and then the second, you know? So it arranges all the computation using the inputs and outputs, and that is it. So this is the basic way Kedro works, but it has a few more things. So one of the other important bits of the value proposition is giving you a standardized project template. This used to be quite custom some time ago, but now we've converged to the rest of the Python ecosystem, and now basically a Kedro project is a Python library. You know, so if you know how to create a Python library with PDM, Hatch, Poetry, setup tools, or your favorite packaging tool of the month, a Kedro project is basically that with some extra things. And the good thing is that it encourages you to separate where the local data is, your notebooks, your documentation, your tests, and so on. So for onboarding data scientists in a new project is very easy. And also switching between projects is very straightforward as well, because every Kedro project looks the same. It also has the Kedro catalog, which is what I described. Everything goes around nodes and pipelines. It has some experiment tracking functionality as well, but we're phasing this out because everybody's using MLflow, and there's a Kedro MLflow plugin, so we're going to let users just use that. And all of this can be extended through the use of hooks. So we're using a hook framework that was born in the PyTest ecosystem called Pluggy, that is quite robust. And so basically in every point of the life cycle of the pipeline, you can inject some sort of functionality, for example, to perform some measurements or to connect the outputs of some node to MLflow or your model registry solution of choice, etc. Essentially, Kedro goes everywhere from the beginning of your data ingestion to cleaning the data, doing feature engineering, training modeling, etc. But then to deploy the model, it's supposed to be combined with some of the either open source orchestrators or commercial platforms. So Kedro can be combined with all of those sort of orchestrators there on the right, or there's also support for lots of commercial platforms as well. All the usual cloud providers, also Iwatio, which was an acquisition McKinsey made last year, Snowflake, and so on. So basically, the good thing is that you will be developing the same pipelines locally on your laptop, because Kedro is very simple to install. You can just pip install Kedro and that's it. And ideally, you will benefit from deploying those same pipelines to your platform of choice. This is a reference architecture for Databricks, but every platform will look more or less the same. In summary, Kedro is kind of a strange product because most of the other orchestrators, such as Airflow, Prefect, and so on, have this domain-specific language for defining pipelines, and they give you this observability that orchestrators give you. But Kedro is orchestrator agnostic, and it's a bit special in that. So we tend to call it pipeline framework, data science development framework, but it's definitely not a full stack MLOps solution. You will need to combine it with something else. And obviously it's not a replacement for your infrastructure. There's a series of links here, basically everything on kedro.org. And if you want to learn about Kedro, I became a YouTuber recently, and we recorded 3 hours of video, if you can stand my voice for 3 hours. And we're covering basically the introductory tutorial of Kedro with a toy dataset that we call Spaceflights. So you can learn a little bit what it is, but you can skip that part because you just saw me explain that, how to use it from Jupyter, how to switch to VS Code, and some other things. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell. And that is it for now. So I think I have some time for a demo, do I? Yes. Any questions or comments before I move on? All right. Now comes the difficult part because I will only have one hand to do all this, but never mind, I will try. So the idea is that I created a project. Really?
Why not?
Okay. There we go. 1 second. Some SSL thingy going on. Oh my god.
Don't disconnect the Wi-Fi.
No, I will not disconnect. Okay.
Demo time is always like that. It's the excitement.
Any programmer in the room? Never mind, I will do it locally. We'll do it live.
Penso che sia la rete che vi inchioda.
No, no worries. Like, let's not touch it because I don't know. Who knows?
Click here so that you will not show this yet.
Ah, yeah. Thank you.
If you need the tethering, if you need another, because I think
No, because if you switch Wi-Fi, you have
No, if I switch, it's going to break spectacularly. So let's not do it. I'll try to go as far as I can. So essentially, I was a big fan of Twitter in the golden era of Twitter. Rest in peace. And I became very sad about its transformation. So I became a Mastodon fan instead. And there's one person that I was following. Sadly, we will not be able to see this content. But Luis Villa, who is one of the co-founders of Tightlift and former Wikipedia editor and a very big fan of open source in general, said one day, you know, it would be so nice if an AI could summarize my posts from the past week and post that somewhere, something like that. And I said, well, actually, I'm preparing a conference talk, and can I use your posts? And he said, go for it. So I wanted to like show that for, yeah, you can see that in the preview of the URL. Sure, go for it. Okay, so you don't have to take my word for it. I'm saying this because, you know, in the Fediverse in Mastodon, it's very important to gather consent from people if you're doing data mining. So all of this, in principle, has the consent of Luis. And so the idea here is that I'm creating a very simple, very academic project to showcase the capabilities of Kedro that start with ingesting some data from the Mastodon API. Take this as an ETL, ELT, whatever kind of pipeline that you like. To store that, I'm going to use a fully open source lakehouse on my laptop. So I'm using Min.io, which is, in case you don't know it, can I open this, please? No, hold on. Aha. Yeah, Min.io is like an S3-like compatible server that you can install on your premises. So it's very convenient. And then on top of that, I am using the Delta format, which is backed by an object storage, but it offers you database-like capabilities. So in summary, you can query that as a database or as a data frame, but then under the hood, it's just objects in a Min.io or S3 storage or whatever. It's getting very lots of promotion from Databricks, but this is again open source, so you can use it. And then the moment I have this data on my lakehouse, I'm going to perform some transformations with Kedro, and then I'm going to use some Hugging Face models with it. So let's see how this goes, because with the internet connection, I'm not very sure how far we will go, but never mind. Can you see my screen if I do this? Maybe can I make it a little bit smaller? Okay. So this is the structure of a Kedro project with some extra things, but basically there's a configuration directory. This contains a series of YAML files that define my catalog, but also parameters of my functions and so on. I'm going to go there in a moment. Then there's this data directory that usually is in Kedro projects is meant to be for local datasets, but I'm using that as the repository of my Min.io server. Then I have a notebooks directory that is separated from the source code that goes to production. Okay, the notebooks don't go to production. And then I have the source code itself, which is structured like a Python library. So I have a couple of boilerplate files that are not interesting at the moment, and then the pipelines directory. So this pipelines directory is structured in a way that if I do Kedro registry list, for example, then this is going to show me that there's 3 pipelines at the moment. One for, well, lots of warnings too, that we can ignore. One for data cleaning, one for data extraction, one for data cleaning, and one for reporting. So again, very simple projects. And I think, yeah, that's it. And there are some tests, but this is not a real project, so the tests are empty. So the idea here is that, as I told you before, there's the nodes where the actual functions that do the business logic, and then the pipeline. So for example, for the data extraction, I'm using a little trick here that maybe it's useful for you. So I'm using Pydantic v2 to define a data class, well, a Pydantic model actually, that models the result of the JSON API from Mastodon in a way that I have automatic validation and conversion. For example, I know that the Mastodon status is going to have a created attribute that is a date, and instead of having to manually convert that to a date, Pydantic takes care of that automatically. So basically, well, there's some logic here to extract the statuses from the API itself. And the trick here is that I'm not actually connecting to the API in this function, because that is given by the dataset, which is the one that takes care of the I/O. So then, I have my list of statuses from the JSON API, so I'm transforming that to a list of Pydantic models. And then I'm using polars. Who knows polars? Oh, lots of people. First time. Well, I don't need to explain what polars is then, but polars has direct integration and support for Pydantic. So you do this from dictionaries, and you have a polars data frame. So this is fantastic. And I'm returning exactly that. Then what happens is that the pipeline definition says that this extract statuses function will receive a series of objects that represent the Mastodon API. And this polars data frame that I'm returning is going to be sort of transferred to this dataset called statuses table. Now it's the moment to see what statuses table actually is. So if I go to my catalog, you will see that statuses table is defined as a delta dataset. So something that is going to use polars to save a delta table. It's going to be stored in these S3 buckets, but I'm tricking FSSpec, in this case, the underlying library, by giving some extra credentials so that S3 is not actually an Amazon bucket, but my min.io bucket. And for that, I'm giving these some credentials, and I'm appending data so that I can keep extracting data. I cannot extract fresh data because I don't trust the internet connection, but I do have data, so I should be able to work. Okay, so that is like the data extraction pipeline, and then, very quickly, the data cleaning pipeline does a little bit of the same. So, doing some usual filtering and merging some data and so on. And finally, there's a reporting pipeline that uses some actual Hugging Face models. So if you have used the Transformers API, you know that it's actually very, very easy. Like, you call the Transformers pipeline function, and that is it. But the idea of turning this into Kedro datasets is that you can use that as part of the logic of your nodes. For example, I'm creating this get hashtags function that receives the polars data frame that represents the clean statuses, and then a model that is going to fill the mask, basically. So I'm adding this hashtag sign and telling it to generate hashtags so that I can use those as topics that are being covered in these posts. And then I'm doing the same with the summary, and I just realized that there was a public transportation strike while I was finishing the preparation of this. So I haven't tested this prompt, so we will see how it goes. But essentially, I'm telling the model, pretend you're a journalist and giving you a list of posts made by our user, summarize them in the style of a short news article. I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but the previous prompt that I tried was really bad. So I hope it's a little bit better. And then how this ends up being receiving a Hugging Face model? Well, because that's also defined in the catalog. So my summarizer model, in this case, is going to use this Mistral AI model with 7 billion parameters. And this is all I need for this to work. I created a small custom data set for this. It took me like 5 minutes to do so. And since I'm on a Mac with Apple Silicon and so on, PyTorch doesn't have CUDA support, whatever. So I'm using this MLX library, which is created by the Apple Research team. So now it's the time to actually run the pipeline. So if I do Kedro run pipeline reporting, this is not going to work, is it? Because it's going to try to maybe download the models from Hugging Face. Yeah, these warnings, we can ignore them. Don't ignore your warnings at home. This is because of the Pydantic version. So now it's starting to run the pipeline, and the first thing it's going to do is try to load the data sets. So if it fails, it's going to fail right now. Not really. So it's loading the filler model. Now it's downloading the Mistral model, which is really great news. And in general, it's assembling all the pipelines, all the nodes that I created for this particular pipeline, which is only the reporting one that takes the data that is already on my lakehouse. And it's going to write an executive summary with the prompt that I gave it. So when I tried this, the inference time was more or less short. Oh, okay, we have it. So there we go. That's done. This is like the logs that you see. And now is where the fun part comes, because I'm going to go to see the results. As you can see, I'm storing this summarizer.txt, and there's a run from right now, apart from all the other ones that I tried. And so I'm going to open that, and I'm going to download it, and I'm very scared about what I'm going to see. Yeah, of course. Of course. Kids, hallucination is real. So, well, at least you know that you can identify that some AI is involved in this process, because I could not have produced this nonsense myself. But basically what I'm doing here is combining, the list of topics that were inferred from the posts. So apparently Luis that week was talking about cycling, Berlin, Instagram, and other things. And then the summary is I might, but I'm not sure. But, which looks like a very bad excuse from the Mistral model, but anyway. So that is it for the demo part. There's lots of extra things that we could be doing here. I'm using these open source models, but for example, if I want to do this with corpora of documents I have, I should probably be better using some sort of retrieval augmented generation. Would be nice to deploy this as a REST API, for example, give it a web UI so you don't have to like download a file from a bucket and things like that. But again, this was an experiment. I hope you liked it, and I'll be very happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. I have been using Kedro for 2 different projects, and I have 2 quick questions. Okay, at the moment, moment, the execution order of nodes and pipelines is based on outputs dependency. And at the moment, I have a solution which is using fake inputs. So my question is, do you plan to hard code the execution order of nodes and pipeline, at least some of them? And second question, I know there is the data set for SQL, both for reading and writing tables. But recently, Databricks introduced the Unity catalog, which changed the string, the path. I couldn't find a way to connect, let's say, the Kedro SQL dataset with the Unity catalog.
Yes. So on your, I think there should be something in the blog. Hold on a second.
Told you someone was
I
already
promise
using
I check
Kedro.
online.
Have you worked with McKinsey?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm very grateful for the Kedro.
Thank you. So yes, on your first question, I think this is the number one thing that people ask, like to state again what he was saying. Kedro decides the order of the execution, which is nice, but sometimes you want to override the order of execution because you're doing, I don't know, whatever. And it cannot be done, and the way people do it is by creating these dummy fake data sets. It's been on the back of our minds for some time. I just arrived 1 year ago, and I have to fight a little bit for this to happen. In general, we're trying to find a more sustainable way of doing that without opening the floodgates for people to do crazy things with the pipeline, you know, because usually we're a little bit conservative when it comes to offering features that are too flexible, because then people misuse them a lot, right? So it's something that we're talking about, but we still haven't found a way to do it. Sorry for giving the sad answer. And around the Unity catalog, there has been, especially last year, lots of integration between Kedro and Databricks, and there's a delta table dataset specific for Databricks, and I think this should be the way to start using the Databricks Unity catalog at the moment. Okay. Otherwise, please open an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Ciao, thank you very much for the presentation. I wanted to ask you how different Kedro might be from, say, I don't know, Dagster, for example. And I didn't get how you took out the code from the notebooks and then used it for the pipeline, maybe because I skipped a bit. So I wanted to see again that bit. Because I really like when you take them out of production, right?
Yes. So on your first question, you know, Dagster, Prefect, Airflow, and they more or less follow the same model, right? So they give you some sort of way of turning your functions into tasks inside a DAG. But then the interesting thing is that they give you much more, lots of observability. They allow you to retry the tasks, see which ones did run, which ones did not, and so on. And so imagine if you take only the first part and you extract it. So that's the idea of Kedro. Plus giving you a way to standardize your project structure, you know, because Dagster, Prefect, and so on don't really tell you any way you have to organize your code. You decorate your functions or whatever, and that is it. But Kedro makes a big deal of structuring your projects in a sustainable way so that you can expand them in the future. So for example, like if I want to create a new pipeline, then I would do Kedro pipeline create data processing 2, and this creates the same directory structure I have for the rest of the pipelines. It creates the tests, and in the future, hopefully we'll create the documentation, you know, so it's a lot about how do you author those pipelines and how do you develop them. So I hope that answers the question. And then, sorry, can you repeat the second one again?
What was the notebook process?
Oh, the notebook process. Yeah, so I actually haven't showed that, But basically the idea is that if you have a notebook, I'm going to create a new demo right now. I can do it what one had, no worries.
Can you hold the microphone?
Okay, okay.
Okay.
So you can do load extension kedro.ipython, and then this gives you access to the catalog and everything. So if you're creating your code here in a notebook, you can gradually say, okay, now this is looking like a function, right? Okay. So then let's start by, I think it was clean statuses. Maybe status is clean? I'm confused. Yes. And then you have your Polos data frame and so on. So you can gradually first remove your IO code from the notebook, right? So you don't have like hard-coded paths here. You're not specifying where's the S3 bucket or whatever. You just load from the catalog. And then you structure your code like a function that is only going to receive Python objects. So in this case, Polos data frames and whatever. And then you just take that function and you move that to the nodes.py. And when you create the pipeline, you already have a function, you already have the dataset name, and it's a matter of assembling the things. So this is more or less how the workflow would work. I do have a video on our YouTube channel that does exactly this. So it's like a 2-hour tutorial that says how do you refactor your Jupyter notebooks. Yeah, I don't find it now, but it's on our YouTube channel. How do you refactor your Jupyter notebooks into a Kedro project, where I walk through this process.
Thank you.
We have time for one last question. Yes.
Hi, thank you for your talk, first of all. I was wondering, how do you handle errors? Do you forward them? Do you log them under the condition of the failure of the pipeline?
Yes, so yeah, under the condition of the failure of the pipeline, you mean like your code is the one that's failing, right? Or
let's say the column is missing or something like that.
Yes. So in principle, with the default runner, which is a sequential runner that runs one node after another, there's the traceback appearing in the logs, and then you see that. You can also change the logging configuration in case you want to like forward those errors to somewhere else. And I don't think there's an official like Sentry integration or Datadog or whatever. But since the Kedro project is just a Python library, you can add that on top and add that integration very easily. A colleague is working on a way to debug a node from the notebook. So when you see that a node is failing, you do load node inside the notebook, and it gives you the functions and everything, but it doesn't work on VS Code just yet, so I could not demo it today, but it's on the works.
Other questions? Yes. Hi, thank you for the presentation. As a company, we use a lot Databricks for computation, and we try to use it in a very optimized way. So there are some kind of operations that we do with some kind of clusters. So for example, ETL, that you can spawn a lot of machine and do everything parallel, and then we have some kind of operation that really needs like to bring the data all together on one node and to, I don't know, involve GPUs or other kind of machine that have some kind of. How you take of that with Kedro? So how you like tell like these with these pieces of the pipeline I want to run it on that kind of node, and these pieces of the pipeline I need another kind of node to run it.
Right. So one way you can do it is by tagging the nodes or the pipelines. You can add tags to the node. For example, if you go to one node and say, not to the nodes, but to the pipeline itself, that this node has tags equals GPU, for example. And then when you run the pipeline, you can say run only the nodes that are tagged with GPU, or run only the nodes that are not tagged with GPU, you know, so it gives you some flexibility to specify what parts of the whole pipeline that you want to run.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll ask a question. So you come from the open source and tech communities world and now work in a consulting, which is not something that I would have expected a few years ago. So how do you see the role of open source in this world of consulting from your perspective? As a
very good question. So, you know, there's this sentence, I think it was by Mark Andreessen, who said that software is eating the world. He said software is eating the world, and then someone else said open source is eating software, you know, so there's always like a bigger fish. Now someone said AI is eating open source or something like that. It's getting out of hand. But anyway, the thing is that for engagements, projects, consulting activities that involve any sort of data analysis, data processing, data infrastructure, and so on, you're going to be using tons of software, and 90% of that is going to be open source, you know. So I think in that sense, consulting is no different from any other activity. And, you know, in general, I think we still do lots of duplicated work. You know, when GitHub Copilot was released, I thought, well, this is, I don't know, an engineer's brute force approach of not having to define like a REST API pagination over and over again, you know? So I think we're missing sometimes the right level of abstraction when doing certain tasks. And in that sense, the more open source there is, the better, because then you can identify, you know, what sort of framework, methodology, library suits your process better and include that basically. Now, this is about consuming open source, right? Now, on the question of producing open source, for a firm like McKinsey, it has lots of benefits, of course, but I'm more than happy also to be contributing to the digital commons as well. So there are like commercial reasons for it, but it's also the right thing to do in a way. So I hope we continue doing that for a very long time.
Thank you. And on that note, I would thank our speakers again, and just a few minutes to rearrange the video. And we'll start with the next talk.